Venkat.
Aqua. What up? I did.
What up? Not in the world. Oh, it's always a decent place to start. Our good wishes to everybody who's affected by all the nonsense that's going on. Lots of good causes and lots of great actions being taken place, which is also great to see. No, always some good stories to come out of bad times.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the hope we all have that those measures have an effect. But yeah, I like that they're being taken. Definitely.
Yeah, and also we're seeing a lot of backlash from the sports community, or pushback, I should say, not just
True.
backlash, but lots of, I mean, lots of federations are pushing out Russian sporting teams and athletes. They've had a case as big as Roman Abramovich giving up Chelsea. In fact, just today there were sanctions have been announced on him. So maybe his pulling out of Chelsea is was timed, obviously, with intention, but I mean, I think you're going to see more of this. In fact, today I saw read a story, and you might have as well, about the ESL banning Russian teams from competing in esports. Yeah, so I mean, the Ukrainian president had made a claim, or had made a push that, like, from the gaming community as well, not to allow esports athletes and esports gamers, certainly not ones who are in any way supporting the war with their Z symbols and all that nonsense, but in general as well as a message. So, yeah, that's good to see the sporting community rallying around, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, took FIFA a little push to to do their measures. But yeah, Abramovich definitely feels the pain, I guess. Ever since that announcement was made now that he cannot sell at the moment. And yeah, it's interesting to see where this is going to be taken.
And from that, I have to, Ben, unfortunately, create a small other dampener on the show, which is a shout out to a legendary cricketer who passed away in completely shocking news earlier this week. Shane Warne. Ben, you might not know, but I hope some of our viewers would know him. He is basically, um, it's hard to call him Tom Brady or something like that, but like that level of player. One of the greatest leg spinners of all time. Passed away at 52 of a sudden heart attack. If stories are to be believed, he was having quite a good time while he passed away. Shall we leave it at that? Let's say some nocturnal activities, Shane Warne, and he was well known for it. He was a big time playboy, loved his partying and loved all of his stuff. So there are rumors that that's how it passed, but either way, it's a legend lost to the game. So shout out to him, the ball of the century as well. But with that aside, Ben, there's also been so much news that's been happening in the world of sport. Starting with, are you ready? Tomorrow, are you ready to drive to survive?
Nah,
Tomorrow, my friend.
tomorrow, really?
Tomorrow.
Boom! I did not know.
Yeah, Ben, next week we're racing again already.
We are racing.
Yeah, you as well. You and me, we're in this together now. You're a fan. You're in it. Don't try to pull back on me now.
By the way, May 14th and 15th, if I'm not mistaken. Are you in Berlin?
I should be, I think. Yeah. Why?
Formula
The
E.
Formula E. Yeah, did I tell you this? No, you. Okay, yeah. I was looking this up. We have to buy tickets again.
Yes, yes. Let's do it. I'm in. I
For
like
sure. So yeah, lots of good sports. Some big news. I mean, Champions League. Did you? Oh my God! Did you watch last night?
just heard it.
Madrid.
I didn't even watch the YouTube highlights. I just didn't.
Man, we have to talk about it.
Let's talk
But
about it.
dude, like, okay, it's sports technically, yes. Sorry, but PSG just, I mean, brought a league 1-0 lead to the Bernabeu. Of course, this year no away goals now, so the dynamic is completely different. Brought a 1-0 lead to the Bernabeu, scored, were 1-0 up at halftime. Mbappe was brilliant, uh, and then in 20 minutes, I think they lost the plot. Benzema,
Green.
it was insane. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway, it was a stunning match. The quality of football on display was amazing for both teams, I have to say. PSG were amazing everywhere except their own box. They just completely forgot how to defend. But I will end this on this last comment. I think Pochettino, in those 20 minutes, lost 2 jobs. He definitely lost his PSG job, and now there's no chance that United or any big team will hire him. I don't think he's getting hired anytime soon.
Nah, I wouldn't like take those 20 minutes as a reason not to hire a manager. I mean, that's often on the team. I mean,
I,
that's
but you could just feel it. He was so. I think his nervousness translated onto the team. Like I mean, and also tactically, the Madrid were 2-0 down in the leg, and the way they were cutting through PSG, it's like PSG were 2-0 down, like they were chasing the game. It was so open. Like they just didn't set up well. Madrid played brilliant, but
I mean, it all everything points to you as the next Man United manager. If I hear your analysis here,
hey
when
man,
he comes in.
we finally got it. That was my secret agenda. Okay, no, let's start the show. Let's start the show.
Yeah, just one thing up front. We did not get many chat messages lately in our shows. I don't know why. Um, just want to encourage you. We're here to answer questions. We're presenting, but we are very happy if you ask us questions. So go for it. I drank my Red Bull. I don't get paid for it to say that. So I have energy. I can talk about sports. Yes. Little side story. Like 20 minutes ago, we changed the topic number 5, the first one we talked about. So I was stealing a joke from Ron that he
Lots,
prepared and was looking forward to make. So
lots of jokes.
lots of jokes. This is not a joke. And of course, I'm going to ask you about your opinion on that in a minute. It's an article of the Daily Mail who broke the story that both Arsenal and ManCity are gonna, excuse me, are gonna sell NFTs that will give you or anyone out there the chance to meet some of their players, and that is I think both virtually but also in person. So I guess they have some sort of tier system, and of course, if you spend a lot of money, you're gonna meet some of the players in person. And why is that interesting? Because we see lots of NFT projects out there, and we're way over the phase of just selling some random art, just a JPEG to someone. All those NFT projects, they have to add some sort of utility, which means you get some extra value, some extra experience, some extra product, some extra access, whatever, on top of the NFT. And it seems like, yeah, I mean, what for example Gary Vee did last year with his V Friends collection now finally also has arrived in the sports industry. And for example, yeah, this article which we have seen in Sports Illustrated / Fan Nation confirms the plans, at least for ManCity, that they indeed offer a meet and greet with those players. You can always ask, so okay, why does it have to be through an NFT? Why can't you do that separately? That's a whole other topic. But in general, being able to meet some of your idols or people you see on television, I think that's an interesting proposition. And again, standard question to you: if you could meet Cristiano, Bruno, you name it, by buying an NFT, how much would you spend? I think you would want to meet them. I assume that.
Oof, I think that's a better question. How much would I spend? I think I won't go more than maybe €1,000, maybe 2,000 at max, depending on if there was a nice dinner involved or something. Like I felt like I wasn't just shaking his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Cristiano picks up the bill for dinner or something. But no, I mean maybe in that range. I wouldn't spend maybe 10,000 or something, but I'm sure there'll be tons of people who will. Yeah.
Just one thing: is it important for you to meet them in real life, or would you also be okay with the virtual one? So, does your 1,000, 2,000 statement is that just for in-person meeting?
No, IRL for sure. I'm not interested in meeting them virtually. To be honest, me personally, I probably wouldn't even just pay to meet them, because I mean, then you're just the guy who went and shook his hand. Like, I mean, what you paid money to shake Cristiano's hand? Like, I mean, I don't think it just says that you have money. It doesn't say anything else about you.
You're not into paid meetings.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit strange. I would like to meet them under different circumstances. But no, I mean, nothing to add in the story. I think it's pretty clear. The only thing I will say is that it actually pains me to see how good ManCity are in everything, in every direction, the way this club is growing. They're so innovative. I mean, I think it was last week or the week before, we covered their metaverse story. We're covering this one. I mean, yeah, some of it is to be seen, what it actually does and how successful it is. But the fact that they will continuously innovate and try things is just a mark of a club that is thinking clearly. What they do on the pitch, what they do off the pitch in the Manchester area is also fantastic by all accounts. But I personally love to see what they do in the digital slash sports tech slash metaverse space.
I agree. And we got a question in the chat in case you haven't seen it yet. It's a tricky one. Ben van Dam is asking, which is the most interesting application of NFTs in sports you have seen so far? That is
Good
the
question.
topic.
Hey Ben, shout out to you. That's a
I'm
good. I
curious
mean,
which
I think.
you're going to
Sorry.
pick. I'm curious which one you're going to pick.
I mean, we can start. There was one I remember I liked right at the start. I like what the Warriors did with their
I had that in mind as well. Yeah.
yeah with their, because I think they connected their championships. They connected a success and try to make basically the fans part of that success in some way. And also it's now it sounds a bit cheesy when everybody is doing it, but at the time it felt like a nicer application because it stood out a bit at that time. And I would definitely follow up. The most innovative thing I've seen to date is what the Australian Open did. I think they're. Did I steal both your
Exactly
answers?
this. These are the two that I had in mind, genuinely. But
No,
go
but
ahead.
I mean, come on. I think the Australian Open one stands out. It was so innovative and it's so involving, and it had a bit of fantasy and it had a bit of like a gaming element to it, and yet there was a very clear real world connection. And also similar to the Warriors one, I think it made you feel like you were part of a winning moment in some way. So those are the two for me. I don't know, Ben, if you have anything else.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. I had exactly those two in mind. I would explain them a tiny bit
Yeah,
different, though,
maybe I was just
not
going to say
entirely.
that.
So, I mean, you have your highlight clips and player cards. It is what it is. Sorare, Dapper, they're successful with those. But I think it's not the most interesting one. So I find it interesting when other assets are used. And one prime example for that would be the Warriors, because they have used, like you said, successes from the past. So they thought about, okay, what other IP do we have and which one can we use? And that is often overlooked in the sports industry because the initial and understandable reflex is, okay, player cards, highlight clips, but there's so much more. And I like you rightfully said, going to the past, having the championship rings, having old tickets and all of that. And there are a bunch of examples like that as well. But the Warriors were really early with this, and this is why I liked it. And the other one was, yeah, the Australian Open with their art balls, connecting that to the actual action that would happen in the tournament afterwards. I like this because of the gamification element. Like, this was really interesting, and it connected the opportunity to win something that was perceived as valuable. So let's say related to an event, this was an interesting approach.
Uh, Quickly, for anybody who's not familiar, the Warriors NFT was basically they issued an NFT for their championship rings. Basically, I think it was 14, 15, and then 17 and 18, or was it just 14 and 15? I'm not sure. But yeah, they issued for those. And the Australian Open basically was the coolest thing. They divided the tennis court into like pixel blocks, I think for 8,800, whatever number it was, evenly distributed. And wherever the tennis ball landed on whichever block of the court for championship point. And now there were many championship points because the Australian Open for men's, women's, doubles, etc., mixed doubles, etc. So whichever block that ball landed on for championship point, that person who owned that block through an NFT would become like a winner. And yeah, something. So that
Adding
was
one more thing, because we had the discussion this week. We see lots of NFT projects, and we divided that into three buckets. One was asset-based, like player cards, highlight clips, other IP that you own. There we mentioned the Warriors. Second bucket would be event-related, like a specific match day, tournament, whatever. There we like the Australian Open. And we had a third bucket that was all gaming-related activities. And I think there you have to highlight Zedrun because it was so mind blowing, so unusual, so innovative, and also early. And it was ready. It worked. I mean, there are a few struggles here and there, but that would be number three that I would mention. And
Also, quickly, for those who don't know, Zedrun is virtual horse racing, virtual horse breeding and racing. So you can, yeah, you own a virtual horse and then you can enter into races, and yeah, it looks mad fun. Okay, as you can see, people, we love answering questions. We got one in spent like five
fun
minutes.
fact, the show's running for 16 minutes, which is a bit over
Middle
half
story.
time, and we talked about random Man United other stuff at the beginning, and now we talk about NFTs for 7-8 minutes. But it's great. Keep those questions coming.
Okay, and in the meantime, I'll move on to the next story, which is about new investors in sports. Uh, some new, some old. I should clarify. The new one first, which is also not new because this is not an announcement. This is an announcement of almost intention, which is also quickly backtracked
Man,
by the
just start the
director
story.
Apollo Global. I'm just clarifying the story. But Apollo Global, which is a mega PE fund, over 450 billion dollars in assets that they manage, is thinking about launching a sports-based private equity fund. So what would they do in it? It's unlikely that they would invest in startups. In fact, I think the article goes on to say that it probably would not. But they would invest in all sorts of sporting properties, whether that means buying teams, buying rights to leagues, buying rights to broadcasting, which we've seen a lot recently in the past. So more activity. Just a quick summary, which is what I like this article about, that you had Octo Sports who raised money to buy a team. You had Silver Lake, who recently invested in New Zealand rugby. Of course, Silver Lake famously owned a part of City Football Group. You've got Bruins Capital, a lot of funds that are very active at the PE level, not just at VC level, at the PE level in the sports space. And here's one more big name that could enter it. Speaking of big names, Serena Williams, who, by the way, Serena Ventures has been around for a while. So if you're like, hey, Rohan, we know about Serena Ventures. Yeah, we know about them too. But the difference is that they have, for the first time, announced a dedicated fund. They've announced 111 million raised. I'm sure there's a story behind that number, but I don't know it. That they're going to set up as a fund. Now, Serena has been actively investing since 2014. The company Serena Ventures has been public since 2019, but this is the first fund officially that they're launching. But to be clear, it's not only for sports, it's coming from a sports legend, but they will invest in founders with diverse points of view. So diversity clearly is a big thing for them. Serena already has a pretty good track record in the investment space. Let's see, I mean, apart from some entities that she owns, she's made some pretty good bets in sports tech as well. Yeah, so quickly telling you that there's more money coming into sports investments.
Yeah, that is not surprising after the record-breaking sports tech year. That typically sparks some fantasies amongst investors. So we're not surprised to see that happening, and we're also not surprised to see that happening mainly in the US, while Europe is still a little bit asleep when it comes to proper sports tech VC firms. So I still hope that it's going to happen at some point, but typically, also another chat we had before the show regarding the reports that we're going to publish, Europe is a little bit lacking of a profile somehow, and the big deals are mainly happening in the US and Asia, with a few exceptions like Soraya, for example.
Yep.
Wasn't that an excellent plug to our upcoming reports, Ron? What do you think?
Fantastic, Ben. Absolutely nailed it. Everybody's floored. Speaking of floored and flying, Ben, what are we going next?
That was a very subtle push for me to start the next topic. This is a drone, apparently, and this is an article on Sport Techie, and it's covering what was, I think, tested at a golf tournament recently, which is drones being used for sports broadcasting. and that is made possible through a bunch of developments. Drones are getting better and better. The stability of the footage is already there, but also, I mean, all that data that's being captured has to be sent somewhere, wired somewhere. So 5G is probably going to play an important role there. And then you can get exciting footage actually. And before I talk too much about it, I want to show you the actual video that was shared by the PGA Tour, and which has generated quite some interest. Yeah, let's have a look at it. So this footage is obviously done with a drone. So the drone exactly flies over the player when, in this case, he hits the ball, and you just basically fly with the ball. I didn't like the end part because you don't see where the ball ends up. They just focus on the stand and the sponsor, whatever, and then they come back to show you where the ball is. So that I didn't enjoy too much. I would rather like stay with the ball. But this footage, man, come on, this is exciting for watching golf. And as we know, yeah, lots of sports entities out there have to make sure that their content stays interesting, is appreciated by younger generations. And this, from a viewer's perspective, makes a golf as a sport much more accessible, much more exciting, and for me it transforms, or it transports way more dynamic than it did before. There are some thoughts also in the article of how much that disturbs maybe the players, what they think about it. But if you see that footage, I think that's just amazing to fly with the ball basically. And yeah, I really like it, and I wonder when they're going to use it for the first time in an official tournament. What do you think?
It looked absolutely incredible. I have to agree when you picked me the story. I was like, okay, drones in golf, but like I hadn't seen it like this. Also, the operator, the article goes on to speak about him clearly. I mean, this is a very specific skill set to operate a drone at that speed in that way. It looks stunning. I think this video, or watching it streaming on our channel right now, is not doing it justice. If you watch it yourself, it really does look amazing. Yeah, fair play on whether the players would like it or not. That's to be seen, but it'll get involved in some way in the broadcast. That's for sure. But Ben, I did what I also mentioned. I don't think I told you, but I had my own Topgolf experience in Dubai while I was there.
No. Wow. How
Yeah,
was it?
yeah. I went and checked it out. It actually was quite fun. Was quite expensive. I mean, it was like yeah, I think like 20 euros a beer or something. So it's pretty expensive. But I would say most importantly for me, I was much worse at golf than I thought I would be.
I
So
mean, that's only a surprise for one of the two participating hosts of this show, that you're not so great in
yeah,
executing a sport compared to talking about it.
no, I'm pretty sure at sports. It's a wonder that I made any of my university teams. I was mainly because I was smarter here than in my feet and my hands. Um, but yeah, it was. I was. There were quite a few times where I would swing and the ball was still there. Typical. I need to get better. But golf is a sport that I enjoy, so I will try to do my best to get better at it.
Question. Which other sport would you like to see drone footage from? I mean, Formula One is probably the one that you, anyways, are interested in. Would you like to see it in, I don't know, football, or I don't know, tennis?
Actually, no. I think with Formula One, I would say no, because we've seen the FIA use drones in their broadcast, and it just feels a bit weird. With Formula One, what I love is actually when you get in the cockpit, like all those cameras which are nearer the car and nearer to the track. Those are more fun. I think this idea of like a ball moving off a surface very quickly is nice. So like golf, like cricket, like baseball, where there is impact and there's quick movement and you're focusing on one particular thing, which can keep changing. I think that's a nice idea. Yeah, because I can't imagine it in basketball. It doesn't make sense because it's such a small space, stuff like that, or even the NFL. But yeah, with this idea of something like there's big action after impact, I think it could be cool.
All right, on to the next one.
Like next story. Speaking of baseball, it's nice setting up a nice little segue. Yeah, so we keep talking about innovation in tech. I think it seems like baseball is constantly innovating with so many different things. We talk about automated strike zones. You talk about robot umpires. We've talked about like a clock on the pitcher, and this is another case of Vanderbilt. This is in the NCAA, where I'll show you the video. Basically, this sleeve that you see has a screen, yeah, which looks super rudimentary, but basically that's what the device is. It's from a company called Game Day Signals. It looks like it's from 1982.
It looks
I don't know.
like this device I have to do some bank transfer. I have this one old school account and they send me a machine which
Right, right.
exactly like this.
Yeah, I know you. I've seen you use it. I have no idea why Joe
So
thinks that's
random,
so
so
complicated.
random.
But yeah, yeah, but I mean, it looks like a bit of a random device. But here's what it does. It basically, this is the indicator to the pitcher about what to pitch. I mean, right now the marks are for the batters, so whether he should bunt or hit or whatever. But like actually, the codes are meant to be for the pitchers. So 1-1 will be fastball left or like whatever it is. Yeah. And the reason for this is basically what this is doing is this signaling is coming from the dugout. Yeah, you can see over here, this is the coach, and that's the device in his hand. And now, the moment he puts that code in, you'll see all 9 players, or the entire fielding side gets that signal onto their wrist. Yeah. And what this does is, so basically, instead of the catcher, who is traditionally the guy who's signaling to the pitcher, it's now the coach who's doing this job, telling the pitcher exactly what to pitch next. So it doesn't really interfere with the play, I don't think. You can see over here, yeah, that's the device over there on the pitcher's hand. So he reads it before he sends off the pitch. So more innovation coming through to in college baseball. However, not a lot of this is going through to the majors. The majors had, I mean, they're still locked out and doesn't seem any closer when the season is going to begin. The start of the season has already got pushed back. But one of the issues that came up as part of the CBA, or part of the latest collective bargaining agreement, was that robot umpires and automated pitch zones would be included. The MLBPA said that it was a non-starter. So the MLB has already dumped automated pitch zones from the latest CBA. Maybe will come in later seasons, but not anytime soon. They have said that there will be some changes, which is there'll be a pitch clock now, which will be a 14-second pitch clock. There'll be larger bases, etc., which are non-tech related. But the automated ball strike will not be making it to the majors. So, I mean, they're trialing a lot of stuff, but the players are still reluctant to win. Yes, no, I mean, I don't see what the big problem is, but I guess the players are just afraid that it will affect their way of functioning.
Maybe they have a sort of negative attitude at the moment with all the lockout happening. So maybe they're like, okay, leave us alone with this stuff. We have other major things to clarify at the moment.
I mean, we've seen this in the sports world, like the resistance to tech, like even with VAR, there was a lot of pushback until it actually came into football. I mean, American sports, you usually see them being more open. But with this specific case, automated strike zones, they was like, nah, we're not having it.
It's weird. I wonder if they have tested it properly, like if they are in general against introducing more tech, or if they're not convinced by the performance.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the reasons. It said that they're not, the reliability is an issue. And we can go back in other sports. Like, for example, when cricket introduced DRS, which is the decision review system, India was actually the big country which said, no, we don't want this to come in. And which is basically that if there's a decision that the umpire makes, similar to tennis, it's the very similar principle. But the decision the umpire makes, we get a right to appeal, right? So we can send it upstairs. So there's a TV umpire who'll review it. And India were very against that at the start because they said that the technology, the Hawkeye, by the way, was the vendor. They said the Hawkeye technology was not yet there, or they didn't trust it enough. And that seems to be part of the argument here. So unless we're so confident we don't want it, I don't like that argument. I think that technology is an incremental gains. It will get more things right than it will get wrong. Yes, it will get things wrong, but there are things being wrong anyway right now, and a lot of them. It'll help reduce that number and take you one step further or closer to a better umpiring state. But they're not trusting, I guess. So let's see, maybe in future seasons.
Speaking about future seasons, God, that was bad. Yeah, in the future, not so far one, we're gonna see major sports events and leagues on Apple TV. We've been talking about it for a while. Apple has looked into acquiring sporting rights, and now it has happened for the first time properly. Apple has agreed its first sports right deal with the MLB. They're starting small. I think it's a double header on Friday nights in the season that hopefully it's going to start at some point. But that's a signal because if Apple goes in, they're not doing it halfway, they're going to go in full. And this seems to be just the beginning of Apple's journey in acquiring sports rights because there was another article from Sports Pro Media that Apple wants to buy a bunch of rights connected to the NFL, one of the most prominent and popular and sought after sports rights packages out there. And it's actually affecting three different packages that Apple wants to bundle into one, which probably makes a lot of sense. And they are mentioned here in the article. It is for the Sunday Ticket domestic out of market rights package, a stake in the league's in house media operation, and the US mobile streaming rights. And this has lots of implications for other companies as well. For example, the last one mentioned is held by Verizon. Another one I think is still somewhere connected to Yahoo. And as we all know, we talked about it before, Amazon is very interested to get those rights as well. So it seems like always lead towards a big clash between Amazon and Apple. Both have deep, deep pockets, and I think the article mentions that Apple has about 200 billion US dollar on its balance sheet, and I mean those guys can spend it. So yeah, it seems to be everything seems to be pointing to a big war in who spends the most money on those streaming rights, who can get them, and also who can monetize them in a good way. But now it's clear Apple is taking that serious. They're starting with the MLB first rights package, and then they want to extend that to the properties that I just mentioned around the NFL. And then you can be sure that this won't be the last sport they're gonna target in the future. You are, I don't know, covering these topics for quite a while now. I'm sure you have, I mean, 2, 3 other points that you read somewhere in this article. But how do you think this is going to develop?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we have been tracking this story for a while. I think it's been at least 3 months since we first talked about Apple coming on, picking up live sports streaming rights. So it's about time. The MLB was a surprise. That news certainly didn't catch my radar, or my radar didn't catch that news. But I think the most interesting part of the MLB story, let's start with that, is that the rights value was not disclosed. Apple has very clearly said that they're not going to make public how much they're paying for this, which I think is the biggest signal to Amazon or to anybody else that Apple is trying to do things differently. Number one. Number two, the story also goes to talk about a couple of interesting changes. First of all, Apple has bought the rights for a number of geographies, including Japan, including parts of South America. So they bought a pretty big package. So I'm sure they paid a big sum for it. But they also, as part of the package, which is interesting detail, is that a lot of the broadcasting of MLB games, because there are just so many, 163 games that each team plays, are run by RSNs, regional sports networks. So they will produce games locally. What Apple has said is that the MLB will have to produce these games that they are going to broadcast. The MLB will have to do centralized production effectively. Now, what that means could mean a lot of things, but essentially it's like Apple is trying to standardize the broadcast across different regions because I guess what they want to do with it, they need standardized broadcast. And what layers they add on streaming, especially widgets and to try and make streaming more interactive, because I think that's where this is headed, uh, will be dependent on how what a consistent broadcast coming to them. And the last one is that exactly where this is headed. Apparently, there's going to be a lot of interaction between your Apple devices and the streaming that you're going to watch. So whether it's your Apple Watch, your phone, even if you're in the stadium, there is going to be opportunities for you to interact with the stream using your Apple Watch, using your Apple phone, or your iPad, or whatever. So Apple is trying to create an ecosystem, its own flywheel of sports media consumption. Let's see how that goes, I guess. And with the NFL, of course, it's almost like the MLB might be some like a playground, and then they'll bring it to the bigger league.
How do you think Apple, or what's Apple's stand towards betting in general? Because I somehow think that the company doesn't really want to connect itself too much with that topic. But I mean, if they have the content rights, and we've seen lots of content and betting integration this year, they have to do it, right? With the
I
next
think that's
big partner.
I think that's a really great question. I mean, look, I think you're right. I'm not an Apple fanboy at all. The opposite of it, and you very clearly are there. So, but I mean, I think, would you feel okay if suddenly Apple, like it feels disconnected, like it would feel like that's not Apple's thing, right? To suddenly launch a sports book or sports betting, it's almost going against the core promise of the brand. So I think that's a bit of a stretch for them to do, but that's where the money is, and that's where a lot of big action is. So how they can say that you use our broadcast feed and add your own layers, and I mean, they will have to get involved in some way, but do it in a way that is still authentic and doesn't, let's say, hamper their brand image. That'll be an interesting line for them to tread, because I think they have to.
Yeah.
I don't think they can avoid the question completely, because there's too much money left on the table. But how they do it will have to be delicate and yeah, managed correctly.
Let's see.
We shall, then we shall.
Anything else you would like to get off your chest before we close this episode?
No, just that every Thursday seems to come and the week seems to fly by, and then it's Thursday again. That's the only thing that seems to be happening. But no, lots of reports to look out for, lots of cool new data that we'll be bringing to you in the coming few weeks. Yeah, but before that, we have plenty of shows. So come back next week and we'll find some more.
Sounds good. All right, guys. See you next week. Cheers.